Director of Deadwood Lead Economic Development Corporation. Thanks for coming today to hear a little bit more about the history of the mineral severance tax and our thoughts on maybe making some changes to keep some money in our own communities. So I'm going to start out and just give you kind of a quick history of mineral severance tax, and then we're going to hear from Dakota Gold on what's happening now and into the future in mining. And then we're going to do a little bit of home state trivia, and then hear from Senator Dybert on a little bit more details about our hopes and ideas for changing the mineral severance tax to keep money in Lead and throughout Lawrence County. So, and I know we have some experts in the room, so feel free to chime in and correct me if I say something wrong, but there's always been some kind of mining tax or mineral tax since mining started in our area. Originally it was called an ore tax, and the purpose of that tax was really to do two different things, and that was to mitigate the impact of mining industry that it was having on Lead. And so that was building new buildings, fixing roads, and expanding schools and hospitals, helping with child care, and then also to support reclamation, the reclamation fund. In 1981, the law was reformed and established a new mineral severance tax, and that at that point it sent all of the mineral severance tax dollars to the state's general fund. That didn't quite sit well with the mining community here, and so in 1986, a study was started to further look at the mineral severance tax, and yet another reform was enacted. And at that point, the law stated that 20% of the mineral severance tax paid would stay in Lawrence County, and 80% would go into the general fund until $1 million cap was reached in Lawrence County. So the interesting thing is that $1 million cap, so that was, I think 1988 is when the law actually was then enforced. And by 1994, that $1 million cap was already met by court worth. So essentially, since 1994, $1 million of mineral severance tax has stayed in Lawrence County, and 100% of the mineral severance tax that's generated out of Lead goes into the state's general fund. So that is, so total, I think it says on the flyer, $54 million was paid into the state's general fund in 7 years, between 2017 and 2024. So if you can just imagine even a fragment of that staying in our community, what that could do for our schools, our community centers, our libraries, our hospitals, etc. So again, the state statute says that the mineral severance tax to be paid to the county has to be used for economic development projects. And Lawrence County has done a really good job of utilizing the interest of that $1 million to support economic development projects throughout the county, like helping to pay for books and computers in our schools. Lawrence County really did lead the charge on the pine beetle, you call it remediation, I guess, the project to remove the pine beetle. So that was a significant amount of money. But that's really just a drop in the bucket to what we need to support our economic development growth in this area. So we've got Randy Dybert here today and Representative Fitzgerald with us, and they're really helping us figure out the best path forward for the mineral severance tax. And with that, what else did I? Oh, so that's estimated. If the law was to change, and let's just say hypothetically we removed that $1 million cap, in 1 year, that could mean about $1 million would stay in Lawrence County from the mineral severance tax in 1 year. And again, if that went into a principal account and the interest was coming off of that, and that had the opportunity to continue to grow, every year we would have nice pots of money to be able to invest in our community's economic development growth. So, Robin, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was perfect.
So I think that the only other thing I'm going to say is this is likely not something that's necessarily going to go to a vote. And so the reason that we wanted to bring the community together is just to educate people. When we found out a couple couple years ago that this even existed, and I know that we kind of knew a little bit about it, but not necessarily all the ins and outs. It was really, we started talking to other people and they're going, we don't even know that that's a thing. And this is a significant amount of money. And so we realized really quickly that if people in our own community don't know what it is, how do we expect people, East River, other legislators to get behind it and support us in this project? And so, again, I don't think it's necessarily something that's going to go to a vote, but it's definitely something that you can help support. You can help send letters to your representatives and legislators to share with them your thoughts on why this is an important change for Lawrence County. And I guess maybe that's what I should say, is this isn't just a LEAD thing. So I'm a director of economic development for Deadwood LEAD, but that doesn't mean that this money is just going to stay in this area. This is a Lawrence County-wide project, and it would have impact throughout the whole county. It just kind of started with our group. Okay, so I think I'll go ahead and turn it over.
I just had a brief question. Could you inform everyone what was paid during the Depression? How LEAD really helped out the whole state during the Depression? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to kick it over to my historian, Robin, who can tell you a little bit more about that.
So we kind of have researched the impact of homestay.
Robin, I apologize. We're recording. Would you mind going over there so I can get you?
And can you speak up? Speak up louder.
So throughout this process, we really tried to research and figure out the impact that homestay had on our area throughout time. The mining severance tax, as Emma said, that only is for wharf. When the ore tax in the 30s and through to the 80s was in place, the homestay taxes were still going to the state. That 80-20 split was for new mining companies formed after 1981. So all of the ore tax or gold tax that homestay paid went straight to the state of South Dakota. And so none of that stayed local. So then we kind of got to digging about what more did homestay do for the community if you're local or from here or had family or maybe you worked at homestay. We know there was a significant impact that homestay had on our community, more than being a company town and helping fund all types of different things like our roads, our snow plowing, all those types of things. Homestay really helped the state of South Dakota. And so in the 30s, like Mary was referencing, in 1931 is when the ore tax was put in place, and we were going through the Great Depression. The state of South Dakota had a biannual budget at that time, and the tax that homestay paid in to the state actually funded half of our state budget through the Great Depression. And more than funding our state government, a lot of farmers and ranchers also came to homestake and worked here during those times. And so homestake had letters on file from the farming community that said, we appreciate that we could come to LEAD and we could work for homestake. That helped our family keep food on the table during the Great Depression. Some people even moved here and started their mining career after the Great Depression because they had that opportunity. So also more than that, if you have, obviously we've all driven through Spearfish Canyon. So with homestake's water intake system and all the land acquisition that they had, homestake were really the stewards of Spearfish Canyon. They established that as a riparian zone, and so they secured that it was environmentally safe, there was no development, that the canyon was really taken care of. And so that is a significant event, and the homestake really got behind saving the canyon from development and really taking care of it, and so we all enjoy that today. It brings in a lot of tourism. The homestake also owned some property off the, kind of like off the Hannah Road, and in the 80s, they sold that property and they took the proceeds of about $1 million and they gave that to Mount Rushmore. And so in the 80s, Mount Rushmore had a big parking lot expansion. So homestake gave the state about $1 million for this project that they had going on at Mount Rushmore. There was a lot more other lead stuff that Homestakes helped to fund, and we'll do a little bit of trivia later to talk about like the local stuff that Homestake did. But just the last thing that Homestake really contributed to that affected the state was the SURF, Sanford Underground Research Facility. So that property was owned by Homestake, and now it's the Underground Science Lab. And Homestake worked through with our elected officials in the state and a lot of people to turn Homestake into the lab. And it was a kind of a long process. There was a lot of liability and a lot of agreements and things that had to be put into place for that to happen. But Homestake gave that to the state for the lab, that we now have a science lab here in Lead that is studying world-class science. And SURF has a lot of economic impact. They are said to be an economic engine within our community, and they fund a lot of dollars to the state in tourism and excise tax, and they have billion-dollar projects going in underground. And more than that, the lab here at Lead was just recently, by a panel of worldwide scientists, Lead was picked for the next 10 years as the preferred site to do neutrino and dark matter science experiments. So out of everywhere in the world, they want to do those experiments here in Lead. And that was by a worldwide scientific panel that chose this preferred location. So we know that we're going to have long-term positive effects from the lab, but all of that came from Homestake donating that property to get that whole process started. So that's kind of Homestake state history. Does anybody have questions? Okay, go ahead, Ron.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Ron Everett. I am the business manager at Dakota Gold. Welcome to our Dakota Gold room. We acquired this with the building back in 2021, I believe. And we keep this room open for the general public. For events just like this, we don't charge. So we've had many nonprofits in here. I don't know the exact number. Taylor's sitting there, I'm sure he knows that number right off the top of his head.
Just over 360,000.
360,000 square, or 360,000 feet of drill core. So if you don't know what a core rig is, those rigs drill a hole or a diameter of about anywhere from 6 inches to 2 inches down. We average about 4,000 feet down. Some of our holes are a little longer, and right now some of them are way shorter than that. But we drill a core, and we take it in, we analyze it, and I'll show you a couple pictures of those later on. So I guess I'm not here to give you how to interpret core or anything, but it's what a core rig is. We have 13,000 acres of private land that we drill on. We have 46,000 acres of land that we can access for our exploration. We have encountered the Homestake Formation at depth, which is really what we set out to do. In the early slide, we had revitalizing the Homestake District. As some of you may know or may not know, Homestake operated in this area for many years, and the way they were able to do that was from the beginning they wanted to control everything. And so the first thing they did is they bought up other mines as they were going under or they needed help. And that was to eliminate competition for labor and water and all those other resources. And in the end, they basically controlled the northern hills. Yes?
At what depth did you encounter the Homestake Formation?
We've encountered that from top to bottom of holes. So it depends on where you are in the Black Hills, but the Homestake Formation is very hard to predict where it's at.
You know what ledge it is?
know that we've encountered some gold ledges, yes. I'm not a geologist, so I can't, you're asking the wrong person. If you want to know those answers, we surely can get them for you. There's some geologists.
New ledges.
Yeah.
Our drilling is further north, so you can't call it necessarily a ledge associated with the Homestake mine. The furthest north that the north drift was a 35 ledge, and we're drilling further north of that, so however you want to interpret the ledge from that.
I have a couple slides later that will show you the complexity. We'd love to have it just as simple as that, but it's quite that simple. We have discovered what we call the JB zone, and that's short for Jerry Berry. And that was out in the Homestake area, just north of here. And that was into the West Ledge Formation. We've discovered the Unionville zone at Maitland. It's a tertiary mineralization. It's a little more near the surface. And at the Richmond Hill, we drilled that and we produced a SK 1300 maiden resource in the Richmond Hill area. We have a TD zone, which is Todd Dick's zone, and it has lots of rare earth elements in it at Richmond Hill. We closed some investments at Orion, which is one of our biggest supporters, and they own 7% of the company for $17 million. And this year, we plan to spend $30 million. We are pretty dang close to that. Okay. So here's a little more history of the timeline of the Homestake District. As you may or may not know, Homestake was here from 1976 to 2001 when they shut down. They shut down because gold price was about 300 or less, and they were producing gold for about 310. So as a business guy, that's not a good business venture, and so they decided they would close it down. At about the same time, Barrick decided that they wanted Homestake. They didn't really want it for this operation, they wanted it for an operation in Australia. A very big one, but they acquired all assets and they set out to close down the mine. The mine was in closed mode. What mining companies do very well is if you have a department, you turn over that project to a department, they do what they're supposed to do. They turn that mine over to the reclamation department, and the reclamation department reclaimed the mine. And then in about 2011, they started releasing some properties that Dakota Territory started to pick up. And then again, 2020, 21, we had JR Resources aligning with Dakota Territory, and we formed Dakota Gold. And here we are today. This is almost the same thing. Homestake produced 40 million ounces. In the whole district, there's about 50 million ounces. So it's a very rich part of the world, 10 miles by 10 miles, one of the richest places on the planet. And right now, there's us and maybe one other mine exploring for gold, one other miner looking for gold. We have a very large package, 48,000 acres. I'll show you that a little bit later. We have a very experienced leadership team. So someone asked me earlier who works here, who started it. Jerry Aberle was born about 4 doors down. He used to throw rocks through the windows. Now he helps preserve this building. So he's our CEO. We have upstairs also Mark Ranapaw. He was born and raised here. He's our operations manager. We have James Berry, Vice President of Exploration. Tim Coleman, environmental manager. Sky Dragoo, School of Mines graduate. Taylor Ballard, Matt Albrecht, Steve Persovich. They're all homegrown kids. Okay. questions on that so far? Okay. Just a few other tidbits, I won't really go through those. Our workforce today, we've got 42 employees, 31% are female, 88 are local people, and our average age is 42. I wish I was the average age. And we have 13 alumni from the School of Mines and 3 alumni that are sitting on our board of directors. We also have a drilling company, and with them come about 50 employees and contractors. So our impact right now is pushing a little bit less than 100 people. This year we're spending $26.5 million. We've pretty much done that. Here we are at the end of the year. 21 million go to vendors and contractors in the local area. Our payroll is at $4.1 million out of corporate office here. And we donate about $60,000 to local charities. We are very proud to say that we have a very good health and safety record. We really believe in the safety of our people and the safety protection of our environment. So to date, we have no reportable incidents, environmental incidences. We have gone over 3 years, now over 4 years, no lost time work injury. And if everybody's noticed the flower bed at the other end of town, I think it's one of the best. Yeah, I do sponsor that. Okay, so here's a snapshot of our land package and the surrounding area. So this red is what we call the Barrick option. We have an option on all this property. This is lead. This is the open cut, and their package goes out about here to the north and goes down to the south like this. It encompasses the Grizzly Gulch tailings pond, if you're aware. We have Wharf sits about here. We have Richmond Hill that sits about here. And then these are all the grounds that we have staked. Yes?
Can you explain what that means, the difference in that 13,000 on private, so 35,000 then?
So private ground is we own the surface, we own the minerals. When this property is on public ground, Forest Service, and we go out and we stake it, and then submit that claim, and then we can drill on it if we want to. Right now, we do not drill on anything but private. Okay, this is kind of the keep our neighbors out kind of thing. Okay. Good. Okay, so here's a little bit more of the complexity. So geologists study it, and then they try and figure out which way it's going, how deep it is, how thick it is. But this is our rendition of what it looks like right now. And part of this is that in our option with Homestake, we acquired 140 years of data. So we own all the data that Homestake ever produced, and so we can go back and look at their maps, all their exploration to help us understand what's really going on. So my way I like to explain that to people that are not geologists, you can go out in the night sky and you can look up with your naked eye and you see stars. You can also pull out a telescope and you can see some stars. What we can do when we look at this is we are like we're looking through the Hubble telescope. We kind of know that they were there, and now we have a very clear picture because we own all that data.
Is that data pretty good, reliable?
Yes.
That'd be fascinating.
Okay, so here is a couple of pictures of a close-up of core. This is the Maitland project and the homestake formation. Again, I'm not the geologist, so I can't really speak to it. I would buy that and shine it up and give it to my wife, for sure. Okay, so a new project. Let me explain. Okay, so let me go back to this map. For a deposit that we can economically mine, right? So 40 million ounces, 40 million ounces came out of right here. 40 million ounces, and they went down 2 miles. So that's a big deal. So if I can get from here, so from being my little finger, this would cover 2 million ounces. This would cover 2 million ounces. This would cover 2 million ounces. Okay? So we are really looking for a needle in a haystack. So,
How do you plan to mine that? Through surface or you gonna sink?
oh, we would mine that from underground. Yep. Okay. So, a new project based on a 2 million ounce project would create $1.7 billion in disposable income. 1.7 billion dollars. It would generate $350 million in tax at today's tax rate at the state, and it would create 333 jobs, direct jobs, and 827 indirect jobs.
Can you clarify taxes, what sort of taxes would be paid on?
So these taxes are the severance tax, the sales tax, the use tax, all those.
Are you including the income tax paid on?
There is no income tax. No income, no corporate income tax. Of course, your employees pay the tax, but that goes to the federal government.
Is the 1.7 million disposable income for statewide? Is that what you're saying, statewide or just?
No, well, that would be that project that would be developed here. So, yes, there'll be a few jobs that probably wouldn't be here, like any big corporation. But the majority of those would be right here, starting in South Dakota.
So the Wharf mine producing 4 million ounces over their production.
Yep.
That's roughly like $10 billion in today's price of gold. Roughly, I think they say this on their signs, there's like $200 to $300 million in profits. The Wharf mine, most of that goes to their investors every year. They employ some local folks. But like the bulk financial return on any project would leave the state.
Why would you say that? I just said this is the corporate office. So this operation, the majority of those dollars would stay right here in South Dakota.
Wouldn't they go to your investors though?
Well, investors at that, it depends on if you pay a dividend. Sure. Sure, they would go if you did that. But right now, that's out in the future. We don't pay a dividend. And I really can't speak to Wharf, so I'm sure.
So Ron, I have a question. So to mill that, to mine that 2 million ounces, how long would that take? And that's probably a difficult question.
Well, it depends on your mine plan, but that is probably a 7-year mine life.
This is based on 17 years.
17 years.
17 years.
Sorry.
From start to finish.
Okay. So that would be good income for the state.
Yep.
I'm just-
I said. I knew I had experts in
I think the other one to point out, this was run at a gold price of $1,600 per ounce. And yesterday the gold price reached $2,800 per ounce. So it's really, it almost double those numbers.
It's a big income. It's what we're shooting for. the price. That's why we're here. Okay? So just to kind of recap, today we spend about $30 million in exploration right here. We have 4 drills working on private land only. We're working in the Maitland area, and we're working in the Richmond Hill area. We put out a main resource at SK 1300 compliant resource at Richmond Hill, and we're trying to improve upon that, put that out early next year. Did I answer all the questions about Dakota? Okay.
I think we'll jump to Senator Dybert now, if you don't mind, and share a little bit more about, that was a great rundown on future projects from Dakota Gold, a little bit about what's happening now, but Brady's going to tell us a little bit more about what we want to do specifically with the mineral severance tax.
We're not gonna have a homestead trivia fun stuff.
We're going to do that next, but I thought we'll just jump to you now to keep the ball rolling, and then, yeah, we'll do the.
You know, the fun stuff after you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm Randy Dybert, I'm the senator for District 31, which is Lawrence County. I took some notes while everyone was talking. I'll try to fill in some gaps here. But I want to back up in time a little bit. When gold was discovered in the Black Hills, the United States and most of the world was in an economic depression. A lot of you probably know that. And that's why we came to this gold so quickly. It pulled the world, and especially the United States, out of the depression by having that gold come into our economy. And we forget that. And if you remember right, Lead, Central City was some of the biggest cities in the state at that time. Yankton was the land office, but the real growth was in the Black Hills, even before Stephen. So Lead was contributing to the statewide economy from day one. And when you get in Pierre, people forget that. They don't realize how much Lead helped our state through tough times previous to the 1930s, and how much Lead and the mining districts here helped our state economy during really tough times in early statehood. So people forget that. I mean, if you look at the populations of Lead and Central City back in territorial days into early statehood, it was significant. So I think it's important to understand how big impact we had on the state economy. Regarding the severance tax, if we modify the statute, this is not a new tax. And I need to be very clear on that. It's just a redistribution of the existing money that's being collected. And it was alluded to that Wharf is the only one paying this. Well, this applies to any new mine. So if a new mine comes in, they'll be contributing to, okay? So hopefully Dakota Gold is successful and we have some revenue from Dakota Gold. But any new mining operation pays this tax. The interesting thing about the way that the severance tax is operated is there's real strict statutory guidelines. You can only do certain things with it. And that fund, the principal in that fund is co-managed by the County Commission of Lawrence County and the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So any decision making on the principal has to be made by those two bodies. Historically, when we've asked the Governor's Office of Economic Development to weigh in, they say, what tax? So it hasn't been used. The principal has not been spent. It was leveraged during the pine beetle epidemic, but not spent. To be fair to the state, the revenue that goes to the general fund typically goes over to the Department of Ag and Natural Resources, and it was used to stabilize the Gilt Edge mine. It was used on the Whitewood Creek prior to those areas becoming Superfund sites. So the state has taken that money and used it in certain situations. The other thing that's important to note is mining in Lawrence County has to have a conditional use permit at the county level. But the county doesn't get into the bonding part of it. The state handles all the bonding. So at Gilt Edge, when the bond was exhausted, the state stepped in and picked that mine up and kept that water clean. So we have to give credit for the state for the money they have spent from this fund. What we hope to do, I want to touch base on the interest first. The county, through their investments, normally has a return between 6 and 10% on their investment. So they're annually earning interest on this $1 million principal. To date, they have somewhere between $412,000 and $417,000 in interest. The interest in them has to be used for the same uses, the guardrails that the principal has, but it's fully at the discretion of the county commission, so we don't have to work with the state when they distribute that money. So the process or the thought behind the severance tax is to help with the bust and booms of mining. So you have a big mining operation and you have a big population come in and they leave. And so how do you stabilize your school district and your other infrastructure? And so that's what this was about. So over the years, the county commission has given interest money to the school districts, as mentioned earlier, the pine beetle infestation, and other requests like that. But there's been several requests at the county level for workforce housing and other things, and they can't find that qualifies. So when you really want to read something interesting, you can read the statute and the guardrails that are associated with it. But it's important to know that it's just not free spending. It's to stabilize the economy from the impact of the mining. So as I said today, we have about $417,000. That's probably a year-old information that the county has. So the discussion is, should we raise the cap or get an annual distribution? Because right now, we don't get any money from the severance tax whatsoever in Lawrence County, because we're at the $1 million cap. And at the 10% or 8% interest, easy math is 10%, we can earn about $100,000 a year, right? So if we increase the cap to catch up with 36 to 38 years of inflation, let's say we get that somewhere around $3 million, then we have a $300,000 return, which may be more than a flat percentage, and that money could be managed by the county commission. So the balance is, do we want to have some annual revenue or build up the principal and invest that money and have that interest be our revenue? So that's the decision making we're going through between the bill, or the statute and the revision by a new bill. And that will be, I believe, a bigger or easier pill to swallow at the legislative branch, because we're looking at something that's 36, 38 years old, bringing it in today's economy. Yes?
So just to be clear, so when you say the $1 million cap, basically, there's not $1 million a year. It's
nope.
It's total $1 million cap. So if you were to spend down that principal every year,
then you lose your interest.
You would lose your interest, but you could spend that $1 million.
Never gets reclaimed. Never gets
replenished.
replenished.
It's like
one and done. One and done. So that's why the commissioners and the governor's office have not spent the principal. They relied on the interest. It's a one-time fund.
And the proposal that you're saying is just to raise that cap rather than have it be an annual amount of money that can come.
Yeah. Anytime you take annual revenue from the state general fund, you have an upstream swing. Questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any possibility or discussion of just eliminating the cap and going forward with an 80-20 split? I understand that means taking money from the state, but my particular pet peeve is infrastructure. And when Homestake pulled out, they left the city with a sewer system that we still have not been able to replace. We have to do it in small portions. It will not meet modern standards. This requires money. It requires bonding capability. With a consistent 20% revenue coming in, you could go to investors and get bonds so that we can fix the sewer system once and for all. That's what severance funds are intended to do, is fix and mitigate problems caused by mining. When Homestake pulled out, we got stuck with roads that are falling apart, and we got stuck with a sewer system that's illegal. And right now, the city of Lee is able to budget about $50,000 a year to fix the roads. And they come to the citizens, the few folks who still live here, and they want us to pay $120 a year on our property taxes so that the few property owners here can fix all these problems. And I don't think that's fair to the property owners. What we need is a combined solution. We need to be able to put some more sales tax on so we can collect from visitors that are destroying our roads. We need to be able to tax the properties who will benefit if the roads are improved, but we need this help from the state. And the severance tax is exactly what that's intended for. And if that money is coming into Lawrence County and we can say, hey, as part of a transportation improvement district, we're gonna do 1/2 cent sales tax added on for 10 years, and we're gonna tax the property owners for 10 years, and we're gonna have 10 years worth of gold revenue that we get 20% of this tax. And we can completely repave the city and fix our sewers within 15 years. That's what I want to see happen with this, and I know that's an uphill climb. What's your position?
Well, if you look at the current guidelines of the fund, that's a real stretch. I don't think you fall.
Well, and I want the fund changed. Because the fund, the way it's limited now, doesn't take into account these solutions.
The other thing,
you can improve economic impact with good roads and sewers.
The other thing I will mention is this is a county-wide fund, not just a lead fund.
Understandable.
So everybody has those issues. You know, that's a separate, distinct discussion. You know, in a perfect world, it'd fund education, drive our property taxes down too, right? It doesn't.
Sure.
So last year, if you remember, we tried to tap into a liquor tax, which is an annual tax to fund public defender's offices in the counties throughout the state. They put a certain number on that for last year. They would not take continual revenue. So we've got to convince 105 legislators, which only 3 are from Lawrence County, to give us that money rather than going to the state general fund. That's a very big push, and that's why we're having meetings like this. So I think, to your point, if we're going to do something in 2025, we take a smaller bite. And then we move forward with those types of things. Because to me, that if we made those changes right now, they say, why are we funding lead and nobody else? Right? So that's the reality.
Well, and I think, Randy, if you don't mind too, it's gonna be dependent upon IM 28 passing too. That's gonna be a huge cut to us if we don't receive that to our budget. But ideally, yes, we're gonna try to get the best deal we can for Lawrence County. And we're gonna be able to feel out our fellow legislators and see how far we can go, because we'll try to do the best we can.
To Representative Fitzgerald's point, a lot of education this year. You mentioned this, and people don't know it exists, right? Even at the economic development level, the governor's office, they don't know it exists because there's changeover. There's very few of us that have been around here that long. So it's baby steps. The other thing that we need to note is if you look at our sales tax revenue to the state, it's 9 million down from last year. So that combined with IM 28, you're talking about maybe 200 million minimum that we're going to have to look at in reducing the state budget. And what we don't want to do in the state budget is have the support of school districts go down so the local matching goes up. Lee Dead was of course outside the formula, but the other school districts, we have 4 in our district, would suffer from that. So I understand your point and your need. I'm going to defend Homestake a little bit. Homestake moved all your snow for how many years? But you didn't have to pay property tax to move that snow. Homestake gave you a water system that they developed that you wouldn't have water for Lee and Denver without that system.
Right? Let's not pretend that didn't benefit Homestake.
Well, let's not. Let's be real. You wouldn't have water if it wasn't for them.
And they wouldn't have had employees.
So after they left,
it's a fair trade, but once they wrap up operations and they get to leave you with a legacy system, how is that taken care of? It hasn't been for 25 years.
Understand.
And how do we do it? The state won't help. Very rarely. They're getting some grant money on these roads, but you get a little bit at a time. And we have a governor that turns away $580 million from the federal government because of politics. So we need to get some money from somewhere because the few people who still live here cannot fix this entire system on their own backs. It can't be done.
Well, I'll add to this. If you look at the cities throughout our district, your tax bracket is higher, your mill levy is higher, but your values are lower. So your total tax bill is not as strong as some areas. So we're going to talk about our district, which we're here to talk about today. That's the point. And I will add that Homestake did a lot for this community. They got returned for it. They put me through school. They put me through medical, and they supported my family. So I'm going to defend them a little bit.
I think something interesting to really talk to these other districts about is
how excited would they be if a tax was formed in their area and it just had a dollar amount? I mean, 50 years from now, those dollar amounts don't mean really anything to a community because, I mean, you can't remodel a park with $300,000 in today's world.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing, 24 years,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, they're doing the
26
same
years.
thing with the tax for the pipeline thing or whatever. They set a dollar amount to it. They don't have it attached to something that 50 years from now is gonna look like a real amount to those people. So it needs to be, I think, presented to them in that fashion, saying, hey guys, how is this really fair when this cap is?
I think you're right, and I think what we could do is look at a linear, and in 2025 it goes to this, in 2035 it goes to this, right? You usually don't see those fast legislation. You usually have to come back with a bill at that time. Those linear ones, people are a little spooked up, but I think that's a great idea. So when we look at this in 10 years, in 20 years, it increases at least to meet inflation, right?
And that's kind of why I wanted Robbie to give the history of what LEED has really done for the state of South Dakota.
And when you get in here, people forget that. You know, they look at our area, especially as we've got all kinds of money. They don't realize it, and we don't. We have 4 million visits in Deadwood in a year that we provide health, safety, and welfare for. So where does that money come from? Most of that's county and the city law enforcement. The county covers a lot of that with property tax. So it's a lot of education. I know when I got to Pierre, they didn't understand that. Did you know that 57% of our county is public land? Oh, really? You know we have, at that time, 3.8 million visits? They didn't know that. Do you know that Deadwood's the same population as Lemon? They don't know that. So Mary and I have been working hard to educate people across the state of the uniqueness of the situation we're in. Now everybody's unique, right? Every district thinks they're unique. We worked hard to get that message out there, folks, to get support for items like this. But it doesn't happen overnight. Fair enough? When you have 400 to 700 items of legislation in 40 days that everything gets a hearing, we got to be working in the off-season like we have been in the last 2 years.
Thanks, Randy.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, like you said, this is a unique situation for our state. There's only one other county in the state that has something similar to this, and that's the gas tax in Harding County, right?
Yeah, Harding County.
And that is a 50-50 split in their county. And so again, if we don't have a lot of examples to go by, but just that one, they're getting a better deal than we are. And there is no cap at $1 million. And so as we are educating legislators, there's few examples that we can use, but that is one.
Yeah, and I think that money is isolated for their highways.
It is.
So when they go to their highway budget at their county level, most of that is funded through that tax, and they don't have to take it out of the back property taxes. Yeah. So that's the only one that's comparable, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when was that agreement set? Do you know possibly? They got a lot better deal.
Well, they didn't get.
They did get a contract. So let me.
And the uranium mining up there gets no revenue.
It's newer
It's
than
not
ours,
public.
for sure. Yeah, but I don't remember exactly when. Okay, so we're gonna have a little fun and do some state trivia. All right, so for the local people in the room, or anybody that's a history buff and might have home state trivia knowledge, first question is, who bought home stake from the Manuel brothers in 1877? Got it. Oh, Levi, you got competition. And then, will you repeat the answers on this? So it was George Hurst. So Hurst bought home stake from the Manuel brothers in 1877, and then journeyed on his venture, as Ron was kind of saying, about acquiring everything in the area to really build home stake to what it was. Second question is, our school has a facility up at the top of the hill that we call Mountaintop Field up there. And that was actually built in 1908. And how many cubic yards? They had to build that. They hauled rock in to build Mountaintop Field. So for anybody
Levi, like somebody that's an engineer or knows a lot about rock, how many tons of rock do you think they moved up there to make Mountaintop Field?
That's why the field was so hard when I was up there.
Mine's rock? Yeah, so it was actually 13,700 cubic yards. And if you think about how much rock that is, that's a lot of rock in 1908 that they brought up to build Mountaintop Field, which was used for a lot of different things over the years that Homestake actually controlled for a while, and it was their park until they gave it to the school district. So to switch gears, we're going to talk about the Opera House. Does anybody know what year the Opera House, Homestake Opera House down on Main Street, what year that was built? 1914? Did I hear somebody say that? Yep, so 1914, and George Hurst's wife, Phoebe Hurst, was really passionate about kids in the community. So when the Opera House was first built in 1914, it was free. It was free to Homestake employees, but it was also free to anybody in the community, and it was considered a gift to the community. Can you guys name what was in the Opera House? There's several things. It was our recreation center, but what was in there?
Library.
Bowling alley.
Bowling alley,
Library.
library,
Billiards.
yep, pool hall,
Smoking room.
a men's smoking lounge, yeah.
Hospital during the Spanish American.
Yeah, during the pandemic, it was turned into a hospital. We had an article where it said that the Homestake Opera House was the most exquisite indoor recreation / opera house building in the whole state of South Dakota in the early 20s. It was a phenomenal building.
And it was free, provided by Homestake.
Yep, free for the community, free for Homestake. Yep. Does anybody know what year women were allowed to start working at Homestake? It's like way later than what I thought it would be. But it was 1975. So before 1975, women were not working at Homestake. So what year was the devastating fire at the Opera House?
84.
84. Yep. So let's see here. We're going to talk about the open cut expansion. And so the open cut used to be much smaller than what it is today. And in the 80s, Homestake expanded the open cut. What was the name of the park that was down there before the open cut was expanded?
Mooney Park.
Mooney Park. So that was abandoned due to Homestake expanding, and at that time, Homestake put $243,000 worth of upgrades at Mountaintop Field that was kind of shifted to be the baseball and the football and the recreation for the area. So you guys are doing really good compared to our other groups on what they do. Let's see here. The original ore tax. Does anybody know what? So the ore tax was put in place in 1931, and at that time, gold prices were set per ounce. They were set. They were not market value. Does anybody know? And that was for a long time, until like the 70s, when gold was put onto the fair market. Does anybody know what it was set at an ounce? $35 an ounce. So gold prices were set at $35 until the 70s, when then they were put on to the fair market where the value shifted. And that kind of leads me to the end. And so the ore tax has historically been controversial, and that's kind of why we're trying to have these public meetings, to just spread awareness about what the mining severance tax is, how much is paid into there, because since the 30s, all of our historic research was kind of like East River versus West River, and the mine versus everybody else, on how much tax is reasonable and what that tax is used for. And so in our quest to have this distribution change, we're just really trying to raise awareness. And so as Emma kind of mentioned earlier, the gold tax right now that Wharf pays is 10% of their gross income and $4 an ounce. And so that's a heavy tax. If you think about all the other taxes that we pay, there's nothing really else that's 10%. So they do pay a significant amount of tax. The gas and oil tax is 4.5%, and that's split 50-50 between the state and the county. So Hardin County and some of the other counties that have gas and oil, natural gas and oil extraction, their tax is only 4.5%, but that 50-50 split. And so this change wouldn't lower the tax the gold mines that they have to contribute by. It would just adjust that split to allow some of it to stay local again. And part of our, our quest in this is we all know, if we live here and we know about this, we can be passionate about it and we can talk about it, but what we really need, like Randy said, is there's 105 legislators that when we go to peer to talk to them about this and what the original intent of the severance tax was to support local and to stay local. And so to really help legislators understand, first off, that there is this tax, second off, what the intent was with the tax, and to try to keep some of it to stay local. And that's kind of a hard ask. And so that's what we're asking for you guys, is if you support this and if you have family or if you have friends, legislators, just to, share the project with them, share what we're trying to do. Because when, as Randy said, when they're in peer legislation, they are busy and they have a lot of things going on. If we can talk to them and they know someone at the local level, like this is really gonna affect our community in a really significant way, then we can share that with them. And then we can also justify that state revenue loss, whether it's, if it is 80-20, it'd be about $1 million a year. If it is a percentage, it would be less than that. But then we can also justify the things that our area contributes to the state revenue. So, our sales tax and our tourism tax, the mining severance tax, our area contributes a lot to the state of South Dakota. So just to try to help them understand like where we're coming from and what our ask is. And so kind of just raising awareness.
So, when you're going to the state and talking about this stuff, remember last session, they came and said, we need a community center in this town, we want $27 million, and the state says, you gotta be kidding me, we can't give you one, let's give everybody one. How do you counteract that thinking here? I mean, do we have a coalition of people who are gonna listen to this, or do we have to call the governor and say, Governor, you need to be leaning on these reps and get some buy-in for this, because if we keep these dollars local, we'll build our own community center, but you're not giving us any money, so we're gonna keep coming back year after year, asking for $30 million, $40 million, $50 million, or you could give us 20% of this that you already collect every year, and we're not gonna come ask you for anything. I mean, that should be one of the things that we're discussing here, and as part of a group, I'd like to know from our legislators, what can we do to help you push this? Who do we call besides you guys? Because we know you're interested. So who can we as citizens contact to say we support this?
Right. First of all, we would go to a committee if we have a bill, and then we would want you to write those committee members and kind of express, your concern as to why it should be changed. And I mean, honestly, it really should be. It was an agreement that was made a long time ago, and Lee has contributed so much to the state. So that's the most important thing, we need to start out doing. But, I want to try to get the governor on with us too, on our side, and that will help. We have lobbyists in the area that would probably be beneficial too, that can help us. So.
Well, to Mary's point, and to answer your question, first step is Tuesday, right?
Sure.
And then 2 weeks after that, we'll know who's in leadership, who the committees are, right? And so Mary and I can get a draft out there and we can start circulating, correct? So that's the process. We need to get Secretary Roberts on board. He would be one, as well as the governor, who's on the cabinet. So, that's the thing. So once we can identify those, This would probably go to either Ag and Natural Resource Committee or Commerce and Energy. Okay? So once we identify that and when we know who our speaker and pro tem is, we'll know where the bill's going. So we have to be perched to act once that goes. And we can feel that out and delay the bill a little bit, but when you start getting to those last weeks, you want to have this already taken care of. So, that's the strategy to answer your question. In the meantime, when you see other legislators or you see people that are with the state, just share that, we're looking to do this because it hasn't been changed. And I think you start with it hasn't been changed for a long time. Let's start there and educate them on how this works. And that's the strategy we can employ. You can do it with your statewide organization of economic development. You can do it with the Retailers Association, anybody you know there. We get those people on board because when they come to the table and support it, that helps. So any of those organizations that you're in or involved with, or if you're a city employee, or even the Bar Association, for example, all those people, the more they know about it, then one of two things will happen. They won't object or they'll support it, right? And so when you get a long list of people coming into committees that are Farm Bureau, et cetera, cattlemen, stockmen, and they say we support this, or they remain neutral. And so that any organization you're in, it's important to communicate this every chance you get. That makes our job easier.
And what Randy said too, I'm up for re-election, so please vote for me on Tuesday. I'm a 6th generation South Dakotan. I've lived out here in West River since I was, 20 years old. So it's really, really important. One of the people that is running against me is not from South Dakota. And so, I understand the community and I understand the area. And it's so important.
We maybe need to re-strategize after, if IM 28 passes and IM 29 passes, that's 90% of your legislative effort this year. Sure. So we take the bite we can take when the timing is right. I don't have a problem, and I don't think Mary does, I won't speak for her, but introducing a bill in 2025 that looks at the cap. But we need to see what our revenue is, and also appropriators. We need to convince them that they wouldn't lose this, it wouldn't be a loss in the general fund. And so the appropriations committee is important. This wouldn't be a special appropriation, but it's a change of annual revenue. So all of those factors come in. So if we can get district people on appropriations, it helps.
Yeah, Jason Blow can help us.
Yeah, he's the lobbyist that is working for us.
As you need citizens to testify, I've got a whole bunch of them that would be happy to come to the Capitol, including you.
Sir?
On your severance tax and this handout that we had here, I noticed the revenue generated from year to year can fluctuate. Is that fluctuation based on the production and the price of gold? I mean, what causes that fluctuation?
If I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 3 factors. It's based on the gross earnings of the company. So if their gross is down, contribution goes down. Gold price goes down, it goes at $4 an ounce, but if it goes to a certain level, $1,200 or something, it's more. So there's 3 factors in there. And that's why it took, at the time in the 80s when things were a little different, it took a while to fulfill that coffer to it or fill it. So those are the factors. So I think the example we have, the number of years it took, is a good indication, especially with gold prices how they are, that their gross is going to be more than it might fill quicker depending on the cap. Does that answer your question? Okay.
One thing I want to mention from an advocacy perspective is making sure that you write your name down here when you first came in. And Robin and I have talked about this from a city perspective, even just creating some templates, getting you this one-pager, making sure you have all the information you need in order to properly advocate. If you make sure to write your name down here so we can email you out any additional information, like Senator Duggar mentioned, after the election will be the best time to start those communication efforts. And so that's when I would hope that we as a city would start pushing some of this communication out to you all as advocates in the area.
The other thing is your city council, your mayors, your county commissioners, all of those groups, are important just to say, hey, we're interested in this. I would suggest we have pretty good support at the county commission level and most mayors, but hearing it from more constituents always helps.
Sorry, it will come from economic development. I need to clarify that.
I guess from a city perspective as well, is there anything like letters of support, resolutions,
Yes.
would that be helpful? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we'll start getting together, sharing out the list of who our new legislators are gonna be, and templates like Kayla said, and so anybody that signs up will be included.
And we could get the wording to those,
Yeah.
that template out there so it's consistent.
Yeah.
But we can't drop the bill till, what, the first week, Mary? Sometime after the 13th of January.
Okay.
And it's gonna hit, once we drop it, it's a few days. So having those ready, and even when it's in draft form, maybe we can do something. But I know I work with Secretary Roberts a lot because I was vice chair of Ag and Natural Resources. So I can reach out to him. Mary has a wonderful relationship with the governor. She can work from that side. That's the things we can offer.
One more clarifying question. At the end of the statute, it says that if the revenue is from mined from state-owned land, then it goes directly to the Common School Permanent Fund. How about on federally owned land? Is there a distinction there?
Yeah, there is a distinction. If it's state-owned land and the state owns the mineral rights, they would get the royalties and the revenue off that land.
Right.
Okay? On the federal side, it's based on the gross of the mining company.
Okay, so that all is still.
Yeah, it's all pictured in that gross.
Another talking point, I think, goes back to like where Ron started off, like Dakota Gold is right here. Right now, they are right here at least. And they, I think, are the best advocates we could have when it comes to having mining in this community. It's really easy to see the destruction that mining can do to the area, but when we have local people in charge of here, so they have to want to be here. Like if our infrastructure starts to fail, because we're not generating income from taxes that's all this is happening, then the people that are part of the Dakota Gold, do they want to stay here? Do they want to be part of the community? Do they want their next generation of their family to be here? So next thing you know, Dakota Gold, it starts to kind of, who knows, you know, I can't speak to the future, but I like what I see right now from a mining perspective for it. I don't want to see it absorbed by a Canadian company or a Chinese company or something that we don't have any idea of what direction it's going to go after that happens. So I think talking to, you know, the state saying, hey, it's important what's existing there now, like that it continues to bring money into that area, because if it doesn't, I mean,
Well, I just heard two things. One is the state should support in-state businesses.
Right.
That's one.
Yeah.
And we've had a variety of mining companies, right? Yep. And the ones that have stayed here and worked with us have contributed more and been more successful. That's the history of it.
Yeah.
The fly-by-nighters are gone, you know, and so we just need to support businesses in the state that are generated in the state's bottom line. And we'll have more charitable contributions, we'll have more support locally, we'll have donations to major projects from those money. We have historically. So I think that we need to capture that and try to keep it so. Of course, free market's out there, right?
Yep.
Jerry or Ron?
Yeah, and you know, I can't speak for them directly, but the impression I've got from more from Dakota Gold is, hey, we're not changing the tax, why shouldn't we have more local? So they support it. Okay? And that's just conversations we've had. Okay? But the mining industry is going to need to come and testify, say, we're not increasing our tax, if they'll do that. So that will be a big part of it, because it is not a tax increase.
Right.
And Jason Glott is SERP's lobbyist, and he's been really helpful just to help us kind of spread the word to legislators, because there's a lot of things that we can leverage, but if you're not from here, they might not even know about Dakota Gold, and they might not know about SERP, and they might not know about Fermi, and they might not know about these things that we have going on here. So if we add all these things up that really support the state, that's our justification for keeping some of this local, is the economic development impact of SERP and Dakota Gold and Fermi and Wharf is already doing that. All of that kind of combined is how we can ask them to kind of keep some of this local. But if they don't know about it, then that's just part of our education process.
Yeah, and we need to think a little broader than just lead. Look at the sales tax base that we give to the state in our county. right? Right, from the tourism. People forget that.
Feels like it's
We also look how much we generate from gaming. It's supposed to offset education, look how much the state takes of that and we generate from it. So we just need to make them aware that we're a big revenue stream for them. And tourism's number 2, but if you get listed where we're at, it's number 1, right? Just about 2% or less of our property in Lawrence County is taxed at agriculture, classified as agricultural taxation. So that's different than other counties where they're 98% tax. So it's an education process, and you'll be surprised, even though they come out here and enjoy themselves, how little they know about our economy and their inner workings out here. And I was overwhelmed with how many people didn't understand. Even when I was on the executive board of the State Association of County Commissioners, and when I was chair of Black Hills Council of Local Governments and the Black Hills District of County Commissioners and elected officials, those 14 or 15 counties had no idea. Because they're in their own little worlds, right? So are legislators to a certain extent. I would say that the Black Hills legislators will support us typically, but that's not even a third of the legislators. I hope I didn't take too much.
No, you're good, Levi.
I have a random, very specific question. Do you have the statute number that is the guardrails that you kept referencing? Because it's just economic development, like, vague word. Can I get the actual, like, legalese? Yeah, that.
I have it in my.
All right, cool.
Emma?
Well, there's nothing else. Thanks everybody for coming today. I'll be around for a little while. I think Robin might be, I don't know about Randy and Mary, but feel free to ask any other follow-up questions. But thank you again for coming. I will certainly make sure that I share any information moving forward with anybody that signed up.
So I can either stay or I can go to the dentist.
Thanks again. Have a great day, everyone.